The self-sabotage. It is wild when you really sit down and think about it. A man can spend 20, 30, or 40 years completely transforming his life. He survives the brutal gut punch of early heartbreaks, navigates career disasters, handles crushing responsibilities, and finally tames his own inner chaos. He learns restraint, masters his temper, and builds a genuine, unshakable sense of calm. He becomes the kind of grounded, quiet man he always wanted to be. Yet, all that hard-earned strength can completely evaporate the exact second a younger woman looks at him with genuine interest. We are not talking about a fleeting moment of lust or cheap curiosity here. We are talking about real, focused, intentional interest from an emotionally mature woman. Instead of standing tall in his value, the average man instantly panics. His heart rate spikes, his confidence takes a nosedive, and his brain treats her attention like an active threat rather than a compliment. The moment she shows interest, a brutal psychological trap springs shut inside his mind. Before she even says a single word, he is already in his own head, quietly rehearsing his future humiliation. He creates a massive, tragic script of his own failure and replays it on a loop. He tells himself that this is too good to be true, that she will inevitably lose interest the moment she gets to know the real him, or that she must have some dark, hidden motive. He convinces himself that she is just using him for money, status, or a free meal, or that she is bound to wake up one morning, look at him in the daylight, and suddenly realize he is just a dinosaur who is way too old for her. He looks at his own gray hair, his wrinkles, or his changing energy, and he projects his own deepest insecurities straight onto her. He completely strips away her agency, deciding for her that he is not enough before she even has the chance to make up her own mind. Let's be completely honest and cut straight through the noise. You have not actually been rejected by the woman you are terrified of. The harsh reality is that she hasn't done a single thing to hurt you. You rejected yourself first. You pulled the trigger on the relationship before it even started because staying safe in your comfort zone feels less terrifying than the risk of being vulnerable. You choose the familiar sting of loneliness over the unpredictable fear of being seen and judged. You walk away, act distant, or make a self-deprecating joke that kills the vibe, effectively destroying a beautiful connection with your own hands. You treat your age like a prison sentence instead of the massive competitive advantage it actually is, completely blind to the fact that your maturity is the exact thing she is drawn to. If this conversation feels uncomfortably personal, if it feels like I am looking directly through your screen and reading your deepest, most private thoughts, then hit the subscribe button right now. Do not do it to help me build an audience or pump up some arbitrary vanity metrics. Do it because you know as well as I do that there are almost no spaces left in this modern world where a man can hear the raw, unvarnished truth without being mocked, judged, or shamed for what he secretly feels inside. This is the one place where we lay it all out on the table, strip away the fluff, and figure out exactly how to stop getting in our own way, so we can finally claim the life and the connections we have actually earned. What women never say aloud. Here is the raw truth that women almost never admit out loud, mostly because the culture has conditioned everyone to believe a completely different story. The mainstream narrative tells you that when a younger woman is drawn to an older man, it always comes down to the same shallow checklist: money, status, a flashy lifestyle, or the security of his bank account. But that is a lazy stereotype. In reality, an emotionally mature, perceptive younger woman doesn't choose an older man for his wallet. She chooses him because for the first time in her entire life, she feels a profound sense of emotional safety in his presence. She isn't looking for a financial savior or a lifestyle upgrade. She is looking for a sanctuary from the relentless chaos of the modern dating world. And she finds that peace in a man who has already figured out who he is. To understand why this is so magnetic, you have to understand what she is running away from. She is completely, utterly exhausted by the men in her own age bracket. Younger men are almost always trapped in a state of perpetual performance. Because they are insecure and unestablished, they move through relationships as if they are constantly standing in front of an invisible panel of judges. They feel an urgent, frantic need to perform masculinity every single second they are awake. They're always trying to impress her, always trying to dominate the conversation, always trying to win every minor disagreement, and always demanding constant validation to soothe their own fragile egos. Even when a younger man shows her affection, it carries a heavy undercurrent of anxiety. It feels transactional, like he is only giving love to secure a specific reaction or to prove to himself that he is desired. This constant tension keeps her on edge, forcing her to keep her guard up at all times. An older man who has actually lived a real life, handled heavy responsibilities, and suffered through his own quiet battles carries a completely different emotional atmosphere. This is the secret weapon most older men don't even realize they possess. Women are highly intuitive creatures. They feel the atmospheric energy of a room and a person long before they ever sit down to analyze the logic of a situation. When she is near a grounded older man, her entire body registers the shift. She immediately notices the things you don't do. She notices that you don't cut her off mid-sentence just to prove how smart you are. She notices that when a conversation hits a low, the silence between you doesn't feel awkward or forced. It feels comfortable, steady, and peaceful. Most importantly, she notices that you don't feel the desperate need to sexualize every single interaction just to reassure yourself that you still have your game. Your lack of desperation communicates a quiet, undeniable power. You spend all your time worrying about the calendar, convinced that she is staring at your age, judging your wrinkles, or calculating the gap between your generations. But you are completely misreading the situation. She isn't looking at the numbers on your birth certificate. She is experiencing the stability of your presence. While you are busy judging your own aging body, she is actually choosing your regulated nervous system. In a world full of emotionally volatile, chaotic, and loud people, your internal calm acts like a gravity well. She feels that you are not easily, that you don't crumble under pressure, and that you don't need her to constantly feed your ego just to keep you functional. That emotional steadiness is the rarest commodity on the market today, and when a woman finds it, she will choose it over youth and flash every single time. The power of restraint. We have been conditioned by media and internet culture to believe that attraction is entirely visual, immediate, and surface level. We are told it is all about having the perfect jawline, the trendiest clothes, or a flashy social media profile. But that is a shallow lie. Perceptive, emotionally intelligent women experience attraction through something far deeper and more permanent: emotional contrast. They judge a man based on the stark, undeniable difference between how he makes them feel inside versus the non-stop, exhausting chaos they are used to dealing with everywhere else. Emotional immaturity is incredibly loud, frantic, and demanding. It is a constant storm of mixed signals, petty mind games, and unstable moods. When a woman has spent years drowning in that kind of noise from immature men, your quiet, unshakable calm ceases to be just a personality trait. It becomes something deeply, intensely seductive. The exact trait that truly pulls her in, hooks her attention, and holds it tight is your restraint. Restraint is a superpower in the modern dating landscape because almost nobody has it anymore. When you walk into a room, you are not desperately scanning the crowd, checking your phone every 2 seconds, or trying to be the loudest voice in the room to prove your value. You don't possess that frantic, thirsty energy that screams for external validation. You don't need a crowd of strangers to clap for you to know who you are. This creates a massive, ironic disconnect in your mind. While you are sitting there quietly worrying that your age, your slower pace, or your gray hair makes you less desirable, your lack of desperation is actually radiating a massive, powerful sense of presence. You think you are being boring, but to her, you are a lighthouse in a dense fog. We live in a deeply fractured world where almost everyone is psychologically fragmented, constantly distracted, and hopelessly addicted to cheap attention. People spend their entire lives putting on a show, branding themselves online, and pretending to be versions of themselves that don't exist in reality. Dating has largely degenerated into a shallow marketing campaign. In the middle of all this fake, hyperactive nonsense, a man who is observant, composed, and completely unreactive is an incredibly rare find. When she speaks, you actually listen instead of just waiting for your turn to talk. When things get tense, you stay cool instead of blowing up or throwing an emotional tantrum. You don't let the world dictate your mood, and you don't let minor inconveniences throw you off your pivot. This is the fundamental truth that most men completely miss. Attraction does not have to be loud, aggressive, or cinematic to be incredibly powerful. It doesn't need to feel like an adrenaline-fueled roller coaster ride full of dramatic highs and crushing lows. For a woman who has been stressed out and emotionally guarded for years, real attraction doesn't feel like excitement at all. Sometimes it feels like pure, unadulterated emotional relief. It feels like entering a safe space where she can finally let her guard down, stop performing, and drop the heavy armor she carries every day. It feels like finally being able to take a deep, unrestricted breath and just exhale, truly seen. She also chooses you for a deeper, darker reason that most men are completely blind to. You possess the rare ability to make her feel seen in a way guys her age simply haven't learned how to do. I am not talking about the shallow, cinematic version of being understood that you see in romantic comedies, where two people magically like the same music and suddenly everything is perfect. I am talking about truly seeing the raw, unpolished version of her that she hides from the rest of the world. You see the version of her that is quietly exhausted, completely overstimulated by the nonstop noise of modern life, and desperately trying to protect herself behind a wall of curated selfies, perfect filters, and defensive sarcasm. You notice the subtle shift in her energy, the faint drop in her smile, or the quiet sigh she lets out when she thinks no one is looking. And the most powerful part of all, you notice that hidden version of her without forcing her to sit down and painfully explain it to you. Think about the daily reality she deals with in a hyper-connected world. She can pull out her phone, post a single attractive photo, and receive hundreds of likes, compliments, and fire emojis within a matter of minutes. She is absolutely flooded with male desire, direct messages, and superficial attention every single day. But if you talk to her honestly, she will tell you that after a while, all of that noise feels completely empty. It acts like junk food for the soul. It provides a quick, temporary spike, but leaves her starving for real substance. Because being physically wanted and being emotionally understood are two completely different human experiences. A younger, inexperienced man almost always responds to her appearance first, viewing her through the lens of what he can get or how he makes him look to his friends. An older, grounded man responds to her emotional state first. You see past the surface allure and address the actual human being living inside the body. The exact second you acknowledge her internal world over her external appearance, something major shifts. The heavy weight of constant performance lifts off her shoulders, and for the first time in a long time, she finally relaxes. The emotional test. However, you need to understand that she will not relax around you immediately. In fact, before she fully lets her guard down, she is going to test you. This is where so many men get confused and completely ruin a beautiful connection. She might suddenly pull away from you without an obvious reason, act uncharacteristically cold for a few days, or casually bring up another man in conversation just to see how you handle it. When this happens, the average man reacts with anger, jealousy, or frantic panic. He assumes she is just playing toxic mind games or being intentionally manipulative. But that is a complete misreading of female psychology. She isn't trying to hurt you. She is unconsciously testing whether your calm, steady presence is real or if it is just another clever performance that will completely collapse the exact moment she stops feeding your ego with constant attention. Women are highly intuitive, and they are constantly studying emotional consistency over time. They have been burned too many times by men who talk a big game but crumble at the very first sign of friction. When she throws a little bit of emotional chaos your way and you refuse to take the bait, when you don't turn a small misunderstanding or a brief moment of distance into full-blown emotional warfare, it feels dangerously rare to her. It proves to her that your stability is an unshakable part of who you are, not a mask you put on to hook her. But this level of depth creates an intense amount of vulnerability, and vulnerability is terrifying because it exposes deep human needs that people work incredibly hard to hide. Younger women today are constantly conditioned by social media and peer pressure to act completely untouchable, self-sufficient, and entirely unbothered by everything. Yet underneath that cold, independent image, many of them are emotionally exhausted from swimming in a sea of shallow interactions, pretending to be deep connections. When your steady presence quietly bypasses her defenses, it creates a shortcut straight to her heart. She will look at you, completely disarmed, and say something like, "I don't know why, but I feel so comfortable around you." You must pay close attention to that sentence when it happens. In female psychology, comfort is not a casual or minor word. Comfort means her nervous system has recognized you as a safe harbor, and trust has already formed deep down before her logical mind even has the chance to catch up. Killing the attraction. This is the exact moment where older men almost always become their own worst enemy and completely sabotage a beautiful connection. The second they feel her emotional attachment becoming real, the moment they realize this younger woman is genuinely falling for them, their internal alarm systems go off and they become deeply suspicious. Instead of leaning into the connection and enjoying it, they let their old wounds and insecurities take the wheel. They start throwing up emotional walls and making defensive, self-defeating statements. They look her in the eyes and say things like, "You're too young for me," or "You're beautiful, but you'll eventually wake up and leave me for someone your own age," or "You probably just like the attention right now." They think they are being realistic, mature, or noble by warning her away, but they are completely blind to the damage they are doing. Do you realize how incredibly insulting and exhausting that behavior actually is to a woman? When you constantly question her interest, you are effectively telling her that you do not trust her judgment, her maturity, or her ability to choose what she wants. You are treating her like a naive child who doesn't understand her own feelings, rather than an intelligent adult who has looked at you, evaluated your character, and decided she wants to be in your life. A mature woman can easily handle the social complexity of an age gap. She knows people might look or talk, and she doesn't care. But what she absolutely cannot handle, and what will instantly kill her attraction for you, is deep-seated emotional insecurity disguised as humility. There is nothing less attractive than a man who constantly begs for reassurance or tries to talk a woman out of liking him. The brutal truth is that your physical age is not the thing creating distance between the two of you. Your crippling fear of your age is what is driving her away. Emotional polarity. To understand why this connection is so powerful when it actually works, we need to talk about the concept of emotional polarity. When a younger woman is with a truly grounded, mature, older man, she is finally able to stop carrying the heavy, exhausting emotional weight of the relationship. In almost all of her past experiences with guys her own age, she was forced to be the emotional anchor. She is completely used to having to force the depth in conversations, constantly decode confusing mixed signals, predict volatile moods, and carefully tiptoe around a fragile male ego just to ensure that simple, everyday honesty doesn't explode into a toxic fight. She has been conditioned to be hypervigilant, meaning a part of her brain is always on high alert, anticipating chaos, trying to keep the peace, and managing the relationship's temperature all by herself. It is an incredibly draining way to live, and it completely ruins the joy of romance. But everything changes when she steps into the orbit of a genuinely grounded man. A mature, centered man does not crumble, pout, or withdraw the moment she disagrees with him on something. He doesn't panic, take it personally, or demand constant reassurance the second she goes a little quiet after a long, stressful day. He represents a rock-solid foundation that remains completely unshakable, regardless of the weather. This rare emotional steadiness creates a safe harbor that finally allows her to completely soften. You must understand that softness is not weakness, submissiveness, or a lack of intelligence. Psychologically, softness is simply what happens to a woman when her nervous system finally stops preparing for instability and conflict. When she realizes she no longer has to fight for peace or manage your ego, her entire reality shifts. You will notice it in the smallest, most beautiful moments. The pitch of her voice becomes gentler around you. Her tense body language completely relaxes when you hold her. She stops trying to perform or impress everyone in the room, and she laughs with a pure, uninhibited freedom because she no longer feels emotionally crowded by immaturity. Real leadership. The internet has completely poisoned the conversation surrounding modern masculinity, breaking it down into two toxic, unhelpful extremes. On one side, you have the completely passive, passive-aggressive, or emotionally uncertain man who refuses to take a stand, state his intentions, or lead in any capacity. On the other side, you have a cartoonish, fake, hyper-dominant caricature of masculinity, the kind of guy who thinks being a man means barking orders, acting completely unfeeling, and forcing control over every situation. Both of these extremes are born entirely out of deep-seated insecurity. Real emotional leadership is nothing like the loud, aggressive nonsense you see on social media feeds. It is incredibly quiet, subtle, and controlled. It is simply the rare ability to remain completely centered, calm, and grounded when tension, stress, or conflict enters the room. When everyone else is panicking, reacting emotionally, or throwing tantrums, the real leader stands firm, like an anchor in a storm. This type of unshakable strength doesn't just appear overnight. It is forged through the trials of a real life, surviving deep personal pain, navigating a brutal divorce, enduring career failures, and processing heavy regrets will mature a man, but only if he allows those experiences to teach him rather than break him. Some older men allow life's hardships to turn them completely bitter, cynical, and resentful. A bitter older man is an emotional black hole. He walks into a room and instantly drains the energy, warmth, and life right out of it because he is still fighting his old battles. A grounded older man, however, does the exact opposite. He stabilizes the environment, He brings a heavy, soothing peace wherever he goes. A perceptive younger woman is intensely drawn to this stabilization and your deep psychological certainty. She is captivated by the fact that you know exactly who you are. You know precisely what you value, and you are completely clear on what you will absolutely no longer tolerate in your life. You don't need to shout it or enforce it aggressively. Your boundaries are just a natural part of your presence. And when she realizes that she can be human, messy, and imperfect around you without instantly losing your respect or causing you to withdraw your love, her emotional attachment deepens at an absolute breakout pace. The real miracle? The ultimate tragedy in the lives of so many mature men is that a woman can choose them with absolute sincerity, depth, and honesty, and they will still manage to lose her. They don't lose her because of their age, and they don't lose her because of some external competitor. They lose her entirely to their own stubborn inability to believe they are actually worthy of being chosen in the first place. The moment the relationship becomes peaceful, steady, and beautiful, they become deeply suspicious of it. Because they are so used to chaos, struggle, and survival, a healthy and peaceful love feels fake to them. They begin to overanalyze every single text message, read into every slight change in her facial expression, and frantically search for hidden signs that she is secretly planning to leave. They treat a beautiful romance like a crime scene, desperately looking for evidence of a betrayal that hasn't even happened. You must understand that even the most loving, patient, and dedicated women will eventually get completely exhausted trying to convince a man that they are telling the truth. It becomes deeply, profoundly painful for her to keep showing up every single day and saying in a million different ways, "I am here, I am staying, and I chose you." While she watches you emotionally drift further and further away because you cannot reconcile her genuine love with your own broken self-image, you end up breaking her heart by refusing to let her love you. Real confidence has absolutely nothing to do with arrogance, bragging, or pretending you are perfect. Real confidence is simply the capacity for emotional receptivity. It is the quiet courage to let yourself be loved without interrogating a beautiful thing until it literally dies in your hands. It is the strength to stop treating your partner like an adversary and just accept the gift she is trying to give you. Aging will inevitably change your body, alter your physical energy, and shift your priorities. But true emotional presence, psychological depth, and the rare ability to make another human being feel completely safe inside their own skin only grow stronger, richer, and more potent with time. She is not looking at a number on a birth certificate and making a logical calculation. She is choosing the profound, undeniable way she feels whenever she is standing in your presence. And after surviving years of noise, frantic performance, and emotional instability out there in the world, that feeling of safety is something she will never walk away from.